Red and blue lights cut through the pouring rain, glinting off the polished hood of a luxury sedan. A rookie officer drew his weapon, certain he had cornered a bold car thief inside a millionaire's enclave. He ordered the driver to step out, completely unaware that the man he was about to violently handcuff was the Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court. Rain fell in relentless sheets across the affluent suburb of Crestwood Hills, Illinois. Sprawling estates, hidden behind wrought iron gates and ancient oak trees, stood dark. Their wealthy residents had long since gone to sleep. The only sound was the steady rhythm of heavy tires slicing through puddles on the freshly paved asphalt. Behind the wheel of a flawless obsidian black Mercedes-Benz S-Class sat Calder Voss. At 64, he carried the weight of the world with quiet, effortless dignity. He wore a bespoke charcoal Brioni suit, the tie already loosened after a long and exhausting charity gala in downtown Chicago. His silver hair was neatly trimmed, and even in deep fatigue, his posture remained perfectly upright. Calder was far more than a successful man. He was the Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court. For 35 years, he had moved through the sharp-edged world of criminal justice, first as a public defender, then as a feared prosecutor, and finally as a judge held in universal respect. But on this night, in the blinding rain, he was simply a black man driving a $200,000 car through a neighborhood where police rarely expected to see him. 2 miles behind, a Crestwood Hills police cruiser idled in the empty parking lot of a closed country club. Inside sat Officer Rook Merritt and his training officer, Corporal Dorian Vale. Merritt was 24, a former high school linebacker with a military buzz cut and an aggressive chip on his shoulder. He had been on the suburban force less than a year and burned for real action. Crestwood Hills was notoriously quiet, mostly noise complaints and teenage parties. Merritt wanted a felony arrest. He wanted a story for the locker room. As Calder's Mercedes glided past, Merritt sat up straight, eyes locked on the sleek taillights. "Look at that," he muttered, tapping the steering wheel. S-Class midnight tint, going 32 in a 35, suspiciously slow. Corporal Vale, a 20-year veteran nearing retirement, barely glanced up from the glowing screen of his mobile data terminal. "It's raining sideways, Rook. Everyone's driving slow. Let it go." "No, I'm running the plate," Merritt insisted, aggressively typing the custom license plate into the system. Here, the first domino fell in a chain of catastrophic assumptions. Calder had purchased the vehicle only 2 days earlier. He had transferred the vanity plates from his old BMW, but the statewide DMV database carried a known lag for luxury registrations to appear across all municipal servers. The computer pinged. A bright yellow banner flashed across the screen. "No record found. Pending match." Merritt's pulse spiked. "Plates don't match the vehicle. It's a phantom tag, Vale. That's a stolen car." "Rook, the system is updating," Vale sighed, rubbing tired eyes. "Look at the neighborhood. It's probably just some hedge fund guy who bought it yesterday." "Or a smash-and-grab crew from the city on a joyride," Merritt snapped, shifting the cruiser into drive. "I'm initiating a stop. This is exactly how they move high-end imports out of state." Before Vale could stop him, Merritt hit the lights and sirens. Inside the Mercedes, Calder sighed. The sudden burst of red and blue lights flooded the leather interior. He glanced in the rearview mirror, genuinely puzzled. He was well under the speed limit. His turn signals worked, and the physical registration sat neatly in the glove box. Calmly, he signaled, pulled the heavy vehicle onto the shoulder of the tree-lined road, shifted into park, killed the engine, switched on the dome light, and rolled down the window, the exact routine he had taught his own sons years earlier. Hands visible on the wheel at 10 and 2. No sudden movements. Wait for instructions. I was not angry, only exhausted. He fully expected to hand over his credentials, receive a polite apology, and be on his way. He had no idea that Officer Rook Merritt was approaching with his hand resting on the grip of an unholstered Glock. "Keep your hands exactly where I can see them," Merritt barked, voice cracking with adrenaline as he stopped just behind the driver's door and blasted a 2,000-lumen tactical flashlight straight into Calder's eyes. Calder blinked against the glare. "Good evening, officer. Is there a problem?" "I said keep your hands on the wheel," Merritt shouted over the pouring rain. "Do not move!" Calder's deep, resonant voice remained perfectly level. "My hands are on the wheel, officer. I am not moving. I am simply asking why I have been pulled over." Merritt edged closer, peering through the rain-streaked window. He saw a black man in a high-end suit. In his biased, adrenaline-fueled mind, the suit was a prop. The car was stolen, and the calm demeanor was a front. "The plates on this vehicle don't exist in the system," he ordered aggressively. "Whose car is this?" "It is my car," Calder replied, speaking slowly and clearly, the way one might speak to a volatile child. "I purchased it 2 days ago from the dealership in Oak Brook. The registration paperwork is in the glove compartment. If you permit me, I will retrieve it for you." "You aren't reaching for anything," Merritt snapped, hand tightening on his weapon. "Step out of the vehicle now." From the passenger side, Corporal Vale approached, shining his own flashlight. "Rook, take it easy," he murmured. "Let the man get his paperwork." But Merritt's authority had been questioned, and his ego now controlled the moment. "I gave you a lawful order," he yelled at Calder. "Step out of the car, keep your hands where I can see them, and turn around." Calder Voss froze. In 35 years of practicing law, he had read thousands of police reports that began exactly this way. He knew the statistics. He knew how quickly a traffic stop in the dark could turn fatal. For a brief, fleeting second, he considered declaring his title. "I am the Chief Justice of the State Supreme Court." But looking at the aggressive, trembling young officer shining a light in his face, a different instinct took hold. The instinct of a man who wanted to see exactly how the citizens of his state were treated when they held no badge or gavel to protect them. "Very well," Calder said softly. He opened the door and stepped into the freezing, torrential rain. Water soaked through his $3,000 suit in seconds, chilling him to the bone. He stood tall, towering over Officer Merritt by 3 inches, posture impeccably straight despite the downpour. "Turn around and place your hands on the roof of the car," Merritt commanded, stepping forward and aggressively grabbing Calder's left arm. Calder's jaw tightened at the contact. The sheer indignity burned, yet his discipline held. He turned smoothly and placed his hands flat against the wet, cold roof of his own vehicle. "Officer," he said, voice dropping an octave into the authoritative timbre that routinely silenced crowded courtrooms, "I strongly advise you to check the temporary registration taped to the bottom right corner of the rear windshield before you escalate this any further." "I don't need advice from a car thief," Merritt sneered, kicking Calder's legs apart. He roughly patted him down, hands clumsily searching the tailored pockets, then pulled out a leather wallet and tossed it onto the hood of the cruiser without looking. "Rook," Corporal Vale warned again, walking to the rear of the Mercedes. He wiped rain from the rear windshield and squinted. "Hey, there's a temporary dealer tag taped inside here. It's hard to see through the tint." Merritt ignored him, locked into his narrative. "Fake tags are standard for chop shop crews." He unclipped steel handcuffs from his belt. "Put your hands behind your back." Calder turned his head slightly, locking eyes with the officer. His expression was no longer merely tired. It was profoundly dangerous, the look of a man meticulously cataloging every civil rights violation occurring in real time. "You are making a monumental error in judgment," he stated clearly. "You lack probable cause for an arrest. I have not exhibited any behavior indicating a flight risk or a threat. If you place those cuffs on me, you are crossing a legal threshold from which you cannot return." Merritt scoffed, completely missing the precise legal language. To him, it was just a criminal trying to talk his way out of a felony. "Save the lawyer talk for the judge," he mocked, violently wrenching Calder's arms behind his back. Cold steel ratcheted tightly around the wrists, biting into skin. The metallic clicks echoed sharply over the rain. Corporal Vale walked over, looking deeply uncomfortable. "Rook, I really think we should check his ID first. Look at the guy. He's not fighting us." "He's going in for grand theft auto, Vale. We'll ID him at the precinct," Merritt said, shoving Calder toward the back of the cruiser. "Watch your head." He did not bother to shield the man's head as he forced him onto the hard plastic seat. Calder slid awkwardly, arms pinned beneath his weight. The door slammed shut, sealing him in the claustrophobic, sanitized scent of the squad car. Through the wire mesh, he watched Merritt and Vale argue silently in the rain. Vale pointed at the wallet on the hood. Merritt waved him off, shoved the wallet into his utility pocket without opening it, and called for a tow truck to impound the $200,000 vehicle. Calder sat in darkness, water dripping from his silver hair into his eyes. His wrists throbbed. He took a slow, deep breath, centering himself. Anger burned like a roaring fire in his chest, yet he suppressed it beneath decades of judicial temperament. He would not fight this on the roadside. He would fight it in the light of day. He would let Officer Rook Merritt dig his own grave as deep as possible. When the officers finally climbed into the front seat, the atmosphere was suffocating. "Tow's on the way," Merritt announced proudly, putting the cruiser in gear. He glanced in the rearview mirror. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney." He rattled off the Miranda warning with the bored rhythm of a television cop. Calder said nothing. "Nothing to say now?" Merritt taunted as they drove. "You were pretty chatty out there in the rain. What, did you think dressing up in a nice suit was going to fool us? People from your side of the city don't belong in Crestwood Hills at midnight, unless they're up to no good." Corporal Vale flinched. "Rook, shut up," he hissed. "Just drive." "What? I'm just telling the truth," Merritt defended. Calder memorized the exact phrasing. "People from your side of the city." The implicit bias was thick enough to choke on. He lived in a $5 million estate less than a mile from where he had been stopped. He paid the property taxes that funded Merritt's salary. They pulled into the Sallyport of the Crestwood Hills 4th Precinct, a brightly lit modern facility. Garage doors rolled down with a heavy metallic thud. Merritt hauled Calder out. The Brioni suit was ruined, plastered to his body, wrists bruised and swelling. "Walk," Merritt ordered, gripping his bicep and steering him through heavy steel doors into the booking area. The precinct was quiet. A few officers milled about with stale coffee. Behind the raised wooden desk sat Desk Sergeant Finch Harlow, a heavy-set man who looked as if he would rather be anywhere else. "What do we have, Merritt?" Harlow asked without looking up. "Grand theft auto," Merritt announced, voice booming with pride. "Caught him red-handed driving a stolen Maybach down Willow Creek Road. Phantom plates, textbook chop shop runner." Harlow finally looked up. His eyes landed on the tall, drenched, distinguished black man in handcuffs. Something intensely familiar about the face, seen on the news, framed on the mayor's wall. A pit of dread formed in his stomach. "Merritt," Harlow said slowly, "did you ID this suspect?" "He refused to hand it over in the car," Merritt lied smoothly. "I have his wallet right here. Haven't opened it yet." He tossed the soaked leather onto the desk. "Open it," Calder said. The first words he had spoken since the cuffs locked. His voice was deathly quiet, yet commanded the attention of every person in the room. Casual chatter died instantly. Sergeant Harlow reached for the wallet with trembling hands. He flipped it open. Behind clear plastic sat a solid gold star-shaped badge. Beside it, a laminated state identification card. He read the name, then the title. The blood drained from his face until he looked like a ghost under the fluorescent lights. He looked up, eyes wide with absolute terror, first at the smug Merritt, then at the man in handcuffs. "Merritt," he whispered, voice shaking so violently the syllables barely formed. "Do you know who this is?" Merritt rolled his eyes, oblivious. "It's a stolen ID, Sarge. Probably pulled it out of a judge's house during a burglary. Just process him." "It is not a stolen ID, you absolute fool," Harlow hissed, rising. He held the gold badge as if it were a live grenade. "This is Calder Voss. He is the Chief Justice of the State Supreme Court. He lives in the gated community on the north end of Willow Creek." The words hung in the sterile air like a death sentence. Officers by the coffee machine froze. A heavy silence descended. Corporal Vale, just entering from the Sallyport, heard the pronouncement. Color drained from his face. He staggered back against the concrete wall. 20 years of service, retirement weeks away, all of it flashing before his eyes because he could not control a hot-headed rookie. Merritt's grin finally faltered. He stared at the drenched man whose arms remained pinned behind his back. "No," he stammered, cold sweat breaking across his neck. "That's impossible. The car was unregistered. He's from—" "Officer Merritt," Calder interrupted. The quiet patience was gone. Now the booming, resonant voice of a man who commanded the highest courtroom in the state filled the room. "I strongly suggest you stop speaking. Every word you utter is compounding your civil liability." Harlow lunged over the desk. "Get the cuffs off him. Merritt, take those damn cuffs off him right now." Merritt's hands trembled as he reached for his keys. He took a hesitant step. "Stop," Calder commanded. The single word cracked like a whip. Merritt froze. Calder turned slowly to the sergeant. Sergeant, Officer Merritt has demonstrated a profound inability to follow protocol, assess a situation, or respect basic constitutional rights. I do not want him touching me again. You will remove these cuffs, and then you will call Captain Lennox Dre. I do not care if he is asleep. Wake him. Harlow scrambled around the desk, keys jingling. Yes, Your Honor. Right away, Your Honor. I am so deeply sorry for this. His hands shook as he unlocked the steel. With a double click, the jaws snapped open. Calder brought his arms forward, rubbing raw, bruised wrists, eyes never leaving Merritt. The young officer was pale, chest heaving, as adrenaline gave way to sheer terror. Corporal Vale, Calder said, turning to the veteran trembling by the door. Yes, sir, Your Honor, Vale stammered, rigid at attention. I advised you to check the temporary registration taped to the rear window. Did you see it? Vale swallowed hard. Yes, Your Honor, I saw it. I told Officer Merritt it was there. And yet you stood by and allowed a junior officer to illegally detain, assault, and kidnap a citizen under color of law, Calder stated, tone mercilessly precise. Your proximity to retirement does not absolve you of your duty to intervene, Corporal. For the next 20 minutes, Calder sat on a hard wooden bench in the booking area. He refused a towel. He refused coffee. He sat in his ruined Brioni suit, water dripping onto the linoleum, a living monument to the department's catastrophic failure. No one spoke. Officers barely breathed. Then the front doors flew open. Captain Lennox Dre sprinted in, uniform shirt hastily buttoned over sweatpants. One look at the Chief Justice on the booking bench, and he looked as though he might be sick. Chief Justice Voss, Dre gasped, rushing forward. My God, sir, I cannot apologize enough. This is a catastrophic misunderstanding. We are voiding the arrest immediately. Your car is being brought back from the impound lot right now. Please come into my office. Let us handle this privately. Calder stood, towering over the breathless captain. There will be no private conversations, Captain Dre, he said loudly, ensuring every officer heard. What happened tonight was not a misunderstanding. It was a targeted, aggressive deprivation of my civil rights based entirely on racial profiling and a fragile ego. He pointed a long, steady finger at Merritt, who looked as if he wanted the floor to swallow him. Your officer initiated a stop without probable cause. He ignored exculpatory evidence. He fabricated a narrative. He illegally searched my person. He placed me in handcuffs. He falsified his initial verbal report to the desk sergeant, claiming I refused to identify myself. All of this was captured on his body-worn camera and the dashboard camera of his cruiser. He stepped closer, eyes cold and unyielding. I am issuing a formal verbal preservation order right now. If a single second of that footage is deleted, corrupted, or mysteriously lost, I will personally see to it that the State Bureau of Investigation charges you, Captain, with spoliation of evidence and obstruction of justice. Do we understand each other? Yes, Your Honor. Crystal clear, Dre choked out. Good, Calder said, adjusting his wet jacket. Now release me. We have a great deal of work to do. The fallout was unprecedented. Calder Voss did not file a lawsuit. Instead, he filed a devastatingly detailed formal complaint with the State Attorney General and the Department of Justice, triggering an immediate federal civil rights investigation into the Crestwood Hills Police Department. The media caught the story. The optics were utterly damning. An elite white suburban force had brutalized the highest-ranking black judicial official in the state for driving a nice car in his own neighborhood. The dash cam footage, hastily turned over by Captain Dre, leaked to the press. The public watched in horror as Officer Merritt sneered, "People from your side of the city don't belong in Crestwood Hills at midnight." It was a masterclass in implicit bias captured in high definition. The deepest cut came during a televised press conference. Calder stood at a podium in a pristine Navy suit, every inch the formidable jurist. Officer Merritt made a series of assumptions that night. He told the sea of reporters. He assumed I was a criminal. He assumed I was uneducated. He assumed I lacked the resources to defend myself. But his most fatal assumption was his misunderstanding of the law. He leaned into the microphone. During my illegal arrest, Officer Merritt claimed he had the right to search my vehicle based solely on the suspicion of a phantom plate. Ironically, years earlier, the state Supreme Court issued a landmark ruling strictly prohibiting warrantless vehicle searches based solely on delayed DMV database updates. It is the defining case law taught in every police academy in this state. He paused, letting silence build. "I know this," he said, a rare sharp smile touching the corners of his mouth, "because I am the judge who authored that exact opinion." The room erupted. Merritt had not merely arrested the Chief Justice, he had violated the very legal precedent the man had written. The hammer fell swiftly. Rook Merritt was stripped of his badge and fired. The state's attorney charged him with official misconduct, false arrest, and aggravated battery. The felony bust he had so desperately wanted became his own. Corporal Dorian Vale was forced into early retirement, losing a significant portion of his pension for failing to intervene. Yet Calder Voss did not stop at punishing individuals. He leveraged the media firestorm to enact sweeping systemic change. Instead of suing the city for millions that taxpayers would have paid, he negotiated a legally binding consent decree. Crestwood Hills was forced to overhaul its entire training program, implement strict anti-bias protocols, and establish an independent civilian oversight board. Calder returned to his bench. He never spoke of the incident in his courtroom. He did not need to. Every prosecutor, defense attorney, and police officer who stood before him knew exactly what he was capable of. They knew he possessed an unwavering dedication to the law and zero tolerance for those who abused it. Calder Voss had taken the worst of the justice system, dragged it into the light, and used it to forge a sharper, fairer sword, without ever raising his voice. If this story made your blood boil and your heart cheer for true justice, you are not alone. The abuse of power is real, but so is the power of those who stand up to it. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in the judge's shoes? Hit that like button if you believe in holding authority accountable. Share this story to spread the message, and subscribe for more incredible, jaw-dropping true life stories.